When you're walking through the store and hear clean up on aisle 4, diarrhea. When your friend says pull my finger and he rips a liquid zinger, diarrhea. When the beef you ate was tainted and your shorts look like they're painted, diarrhea. When you have to stop and poop and it looks like mushroom soup, diarrhea. When you try to get a drink and end up crapping in the sink, diarrhea. When your rear end blows its nose and it ruins your new clothes, diarrhea. When your rectum gets real cranky and your anus needs a hanky, diarrhea. When your sphincter comes unclenched and your trousers get well drenched, diarrhea. When you argue with your dad and your bowel control goes bad, diarrhea. When your squirts are so fast-paced that you drown in your own waste, diarrhea. When your girlfriend won't stop talking and your anus starts unlocking, diarrhea. When you're sleepy and lie down and you start to dream in brown, diarrhea. When you eat figs by the score and they squirt from your back door, diarrhea. When you just failed a big test and your pants feel like they're mess, diarrhea. When you flip on the light switch and your butt makes a wild pitch, diarrhea. When the cook is a gourmet and he makes a brown entree, diarrhea. When your farts sound wet and muted and your skivvies are polluted, diarrhea. When you can't keep it together and your butt predicts bad weather, diarrhea. When your cruise ship runs aground and your underwear gets drowned, diarrhea. When you hear your butt go crunch and smelled half-digested lunch, diarrhea. When you're trying hard to tiptoe but it doesn't stop the outflow, diarrhea. When you're feeling your turds knock but what comes out's more like chalk, diarrhea. When the cramps come in big waves and your colon misbehaves, diarrhea. When you race into the bathroom and poop's dripping from your costume, diarrhea. When you lift your infant son and down your arm it starts to run, diarrhea. When your BM is unplanned and you get some on your hand, diarrhea. When your sphincter won't obey and it makes you a parfait, diarrhea. When you're having trouble thinking 'cause your butt is really stinking, diarrhea. When you reach to scratch your back and you hear your anus hack, diarrhea. When your poop is all compacted and it quickly gets extracted, diarrhea. When you fall and sprain your foot and your doo-doo won't stay put, diarrhea. When you just can't keep your grip and your sphincter muscles slip, diarrhea. When you generate some drama 'cause your poo-poo soaks your mama, diarrhea. When you slip and rip out loud and it makes a toxic cloud, diarrhea. When you need a large umbrella 'cause you just sprayed out Nutella, diarrhea. When you stop along the roadside and squat down and make a mudslide, diarrhea. When you just arrived in Fargo and your rectum dumps its cargo, diarrhea. When you're making so much scat that you have to call hazmat, diarrhea. When your father should be napping but he just snorts and starts crapping, diarrhea. When your anus is so hyper that it needs a windshield wiper, diarrhea. When you hang some mistletoe and you feel the pressure grow, diarrhea. When you deck the halls with holly and your anus gets real squally, diarrhea. When it's almost Christmas Eve and your poot chute starts to heave, diarrhea. When you drink some Christmas nog and you make a liquid log, diarrhea. When you buy a Christmas tree and your butt sets something free, diarrhea. When you get your Christmas stocking and your undies get a flocking, diarrhea. When Santa Claus is on his way and Rudolph squats and paints his sleigh, diarrhea. When you're waiting for St. Nick and he leaves you something slick, diarrhea. When Santa Claus says ho 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 and Rudolph's keister starts to glow, diarrhea. When Mrs. Claus is acting weird and her poop soaks and his beard, diarrhea. When Santa's elves all jump and holler 'cause there's brown stuff on his collar, diarrhea. When Santa's dropping off your gift and his hiney starts to lift, diarrhea. When Mrs. Claus begins to shout 'cause her colon's inside out, diarrhea. When it's late on Christmas Day and your anus shouts make way, diarrhea. When Santa's Christmas work is done and he rips one just for fun, diarrhea. When you're singing Christmas carols and your squirts fill up 2 barrels, diarrhea. When your stomach feels unpleasant and you soil your Christmas present, diarrhea. When someone yells inbound and you squeeze a 3-pound mound, diarrhea. When you lose your civic pride 'cause your squirts cause a king tide, diarrhea. When you're feeling really stressed and your poo can't be suppressed, diarrhea. When you hear a mournful groan and your best friend's butt has blown, diarrhea. When you just remove the wrapper and you dash into the crapper, diarrhea. When you feel your colon pull and your undies are all full, diarrhea. When your stomach pain is numbing and there's humming in your plumbing, diarrhea. When a cork you have applied 'cause your poo-poo reached high tide, diarrhea. When you eat a summer squash and your new pants need a wash, diarrhea. When you've had a pooping drought and a brownout starts to sprout, diarrhea. When your poop chute's feeling breezy and your shorts are wet and cheesy, diarrhea. When you may have a disease and your butt begins to sneeze, diarrhea. When your doggy's tail is wagging but his rear is wet and sagging, diarrhea. When you have an anal storm and the blowflies start to swarm, diarrhea. When your shorts are getting septic 'cause your butt went apoplectic, diarrhea. When your anus begins venting and your undies are fermenting, diarrhea. When your sphincter goes real slack and you just ate a Big Mac, diarrhea. When you squat to tie your shoe and your butt makes poo-poo stew, diarrhea. When your mom screams, oh my gosh, and her panties start to slosh, diarrhea. When you feel your chute exhale and it sprays poop on the trail, diarrhea. When the goodbye's bittersweet and you crap on the car seat, diarrhea. When you wake up in the night and a turd you expedite, diarrhea. When your pooper starts to flare and it sticks you to your chair, diarrhea. When you think your squirts are gone, then you fertilize the lawn, diarrhea. When you eat it as potato and it comes out as tomato, diarrhea. When you hear a lion roar and you feel your rectum pour, diarrhea. When your stomach's all in knots and your poop chute's taking shots, diarrhea. When you're standing in the rain and you feel a rectal pain, diarrhea. When it starts with just some squeaks, then it leaks out on your cheeks, diarrhea. When you're hearing something hum and it's coming from your bum, diarrhea. When your team just lost the game and your anus cries in shame, diarrhea. When you get a funny gut ache and you make a runny butt cake, diarrhea. When you're fevered and you're flushing and the brown stuff comes out gushing, diarrhea. When you have to stop and squat and the result floats a yacht, diarrhea. When your bowels don't seem quite right and your poop squirts out in flight, diarrhea. When the sunset's really stunning but you're feeling something running, diarrhea. When the floor has to be mopped 'cause your large intestine popped, diarrhea. When you feel your colon shift and your butt gives you a gift, diarrhea. When there's something on your shoe and it has a tannish hue, diarrhea. When you start to feel all wasted and your pants are getting pasted, diarrhea. When the feeling is abrupt and your bowels start to erupt, diarrhea. When your butt lets out a gust and your sphincter gives a thrust, diarrhea. When you know it isn't rain and it's coming from your aim, diarrhea. When your butt emits a fume and it makes a nasty plume, diarrhea. When you're drinking from your cup and your butt starts to throw up, diarrhea. When the evening is serene and you make an anal scene, diarrhea. When you're working on your truck and your anus runs amok, diarrhea. When you stand up and you bolt and your rear starts a revolt, diarrhea. When you can't reach the flush handle and your butt's a Roman candle, diarrhea. When you're cooking up a brisket and you make a wet air biscuit, diarrhea. When you flex your rectal muscle and your speedo starts to rustle, diarrhea. When the clock is striking noon and you make a brown monsoon, diarrhea. When the clock is striking 1 and you crap a metric ton, diarrhea. When the clock is striking 2 and your colon births a brew, diarrhea. When the clock is striking 3 and your keister spurts debris, diarrhea. When the clock is striking 4 and you know there's poop galore, diarrhea. When the clock is striking 5 and your chute's in overdrive, diarrhea. When the clock is striking 6 and your rectum does some tricks, diarrhea. When the clock is striking 7 and something's dripping out of Kevin, diarrhea. When the clock strikes 7:30 and your butt does something dirty, diarrhea. When the clock is striking 8 and your streamers escalate, diarrhea. When the clock nears 8:05 and your sphincter comes alive, diarrhea. When the clock is striking 9 and you paint a slick brown line, diarrhea. When the clock gets near 9:30 and you're feeling something squirty, diarrhea. When the clock is striking 10 and your rear sounds like Big Ben, diarrhea. When the clock gets near 11 and the stench is not from heaven, diarrhea. When the clock is striking midnight and your poo-poo is in free flight, diarrhea. When like a parrot eating fruit, it comes squirting out your chute, diarrhea. When your friends just stand there gawking at what's running down your stocking, diarrhea. When you're forced to make a choice and your anus adds its voice, diarrhea. When you've spent the night out mooning and your keister starts ballooning, diarrhea. When your head begins to spin and something's nasty on your shin, diarrhea. When your friends all call you stinky 'cause you birthed out something inky, diarrhea. When you're standing there just shaving and your ain starts misbehaving, diarrhea. When dad kicks you in the chute and gets brown goo on his boot, diarrhea. When like a speeding comet, a gush bursts out through your grommet, diarrhea. When you try to hit a note and your anus clears its throat, diarrhea. When much to your chagrin, fecal matter coats your skin, diarrhea. When your nose begins to crinkle and your butt begins to sprinkle, diarrhea. When you start to hear a squeal and your rear end blows its seal, diarrhea. When you start to feel all woozy and your anus gets all juicy, diarrhea. When you eat some black bean soup and your pants fill up with goop, diarrhea. When you're feeling kind of bloated and your underpants get coated, diarrhea. When you're flying on a plane and a bump loosens your ain, diarrhea. When you're having fun out sailing, then you feel your sphincter failing, diarrhea. When you eat some potted meat and there's cocoa on your seat, diarrhea. When the boat begins to pitch and your poo starts to unhitch, diarrhea. When you start to close your eyes and you get a brown surprise, diarrhea. When you're listening to the blues and your anus starts to ooze, diarrhea. When you think the ceiling's spinning and you feel your doo-doo thinning, diarrhea. When you're hanging at the ballpark and your anus makes a hash mark, diarrhea. When your friend gives you a nudge and you can't hold in your fudge, diarrhea. When you're talking with your boss and your rectum makes a sauce, diarrhea. When you're driving your Toyota and your butt exceeds its quota, diarrhea. When you try to have a chat and your scat splats on your cat, diarrhea. When you're in the sun just tanning and your butt shoots like a cannon, diarrhea. When you eat the Colonel's chicken and your skivvies start to slicken, diarrhea. When you're feeling nauseated and your shorts get decorated, diarrhea. When you can't control your stutter and your anus starts to sputter, diarrhea. When your poo-poo fills a jug, then it spills out on the rug, diarrhea. When you wake up to the sound of your undies getting brown, diarrhea. When you see a scary mask and your squirts fill up a cask, diarrhea. When you just squeezed out a whopper and your anus needs a stopper, diarrhea. When you wipe your butt with care, then it sprays up in your hair, diarrhea. When your vision is a blurrin' and your poop seems more like urine, diarrhea. When you're the nervous groom and you make a fecal bloom, diarrhea. When you're baking up some strudels and your rear releases oodles, diarrhea. When you're getting dressed to go out and your sphincter has a blowout, diarrhea. When you drink too many cokes and your anus coughs and chokes, diarrhea. When you think you've wiped it clean, then you see a telltale sheen, diarrhea. When you're working at the deli and your butt makes smelly jelly, diarrhea. When you're leaving the cafe and you feel runny puree, diarrhea. When you're playing with your doggy and your underwear gets soggy, diarrhea. When you're playing with your birdie and excrete something squirty, diarrhea. When you just pooped something gritty and your anus sings a ditty, diarrhea. When your stomach won't quit churning and your sphincter won't stop burning, diarrhea. When your pucker string comes untied and your poop won't stay inside, diarrhea. When your flight hits an air pocket and your poo shoots like a rocket, diarrhea. When your sphincter starts to ache and it makes a big mistake, diarrhea. When you drink a healing tonic and your rear goes supersonic, diarrhea. When you're out of toilet paper 'cause what came out wasn't vapor, diarrhea. When you know you can't relax 'cause you took too much X-Lax, diarrhea. When you reach to get your ticket and your butt leaks like a spigot, diarrhea. When your stomach starts to plunge and your colon starts to lunge, diarrhea. When you're wishing on a star and it shoots out really far, diarrhea. When your face is all contorted and your butt's brown and distorted, diarrhea. When the airplane hits a bump and you take an unplanned dump, diarrhea. When you grab your butt in pain, then you feel it start to drain, diarrhea. When you're aching with the flu and the poo's all over you, diarrhea. When your anus starts to whistle and shoots out a guided missile, diarrhea. When you're having cheese and noodles and you crap on your pet poodles, diarrhea. When you try to take a dump and your anus starts to pump, diarrhea. When you're cleaning up your closet and your chute makes a deposit, diarrhea. When you just ate pork and beans and you plaster your new jeans, diarrhea. When you smell some strong perfume and your chute becomes a flume, diarrhea. When your belt's tight on your waist and you squirt a slick brown paste, diarrhea. When you're dancing at the prom and your butt unloads a bomb, diarrhea. When you have bad IBS and it ruins your new dress, diarrhea. When you're putting on your bonnet and your anus sings a sonnet, diarrhea. When the music is a thumping and your poop chute starts a dumping, diarrhea. When your friends aren't happy campers 'cause you overflowed your Pampers, diarrhea. When your undies look all dark and you see a big skid mark, diarrhea. When you have to change your stance 'cause a gusher fills your pants, diarrhea. When you cut onions for frying but your anus is what's crying, diarrhea. When your BM starts to dangle and it comes out at an angle, diarrhea. When you sit on grandma's lap and you spackle her with crap, diarrhea. When you feel the brown note play and your colon starts to sway, diarrhea. When there's something on your shoe and it's runny number 2, diarrhea. When you hear a splashy sound and your undies have been drowned, diarrhea. When the hot sauce was delicious but your ribs are getting vicious, diarrhea. When you're listening to rap and get soaked with liquid crap, diarrhea. When you drift off and you snooze and your rear end blows a fuse, diarrhea. When you can't control your spillway and you eat your meals at Subway, diarrhea. When you eat steak and fondue and your colon makes beef stew, diarrhea. When you just drank all the wine and your butt draws a brown line, diarrhea. When it starts out as a smell and your anus starts to swell, diarrhea. When you think you've got a cold and you squirt out slimy mold, diarrhea. When you're driving your Volkswagen and your sphincter won't quit nagging, diarrhea. When you're working on your roof and your hiney makes a goof, diarrhea. When you're riding on your scooter and your butt becomes a shooter, diarrhea. When you can't restrain your poo and you make a turtle stew, diarrhea. When you feel a gentle tapping and your poo-poo is brown capping, diarrhea. When you give writing a try and the turdlet dots the I, diarrhea. When you've tried all the best browsers and give up and crap your trousers, diarrhea. When you know you have the flu 'cause your wrinkle gasket blue, diarrhea. When you smell a pungent scent and your poop chute starts to vent, diarrhea. When you feel your anus twinge and your butt goes on a binge, diarrhea. When you lie there counting sheep and your rear end starts to seep, diarrhea. When you're walking down the hall and it shoots out on the wall, diarrhea. When lately it sure seems like you're pooping in your dreams, diarrhea. When you're rocking at a concert and your colon tries to invert, diarrhea. When you view it through your monocle and it looks all green and conical, diarrhea. When you have pain when you're sitting and your anus is raw and splitting, diarrhea. When your belly's feeling distraught and there's pain in your balloon knot, diarrhea. When you try to get home fast and you feel an anal blast, diarrhea. When you think you hear a prowler but you find that it's a growler, diarrhea. When you're walking into Walmart and find poo-poo on your pushcart, diarrhea. When like pureed chocolate cream it shoots out in one big stream, diarrhea. When you find you're so obese that it's all trapped in your crease, diarrhea. When your anus starts to yell and it squirts out thin brown gel, diarrhea. When you're startled by a spider and you birth some chocolate cider, diarrhea. When the nurse yells, "Let's inject 'em," and you feel pain in your rectum, diarrhea. When you eat clams from the grill and your hiney starts to spill, diarrhea. When it doesn't smell like chicken and it's sure not finger licking, diarrhea. When you know that you're in trouble 'cause your butt just blew a bubble, diarrhea. When your dog is so darn fat that he can't control his scat, diarrhea. When you miss the bathroom door and you coat the nice clean floor, diarrhea. When you just popped out a hemorrhoid and your butt is going schizoid, diarrhea. When you get a nasty cough and your poopy squirts like broth, diarrhea. When you win a baseball bet and your prize is brown and wet, diarrhea. When you win a football pool and your money's wet with stool, diarrhea. When your colon gets so hyper that you need an adult diaper, diarrhea. When you're putting on your boot and something's racing down your chute, diarrhea. When you ate a tainted crepe and the squirts start to take shape, diarrhea. When the poo-poo starts to fly and you get some in your eye, diarrhea. When you start to squirm and grunt and your butt makes a wave front, diarrhea. When you eat at TGI Fridays and you soil your tidy whities, diarrhea. When you hear something go clank and your rear end dumps its tank, diarrhea. When you stand up to say thank you and your rectum does a corkscrew, diarrhea. When you're hanging with your homie and you birth out something foamy, diarrhea. When you can't stop a big sneeze and your rear shoots a wet breeze, diarrhea. When she smiles and shows her dimple, then her butt pops like a pimple, diarrhea. When you're acting acrobatic and your rectum goes pneumatic, diarrhea. When you try to act all prissy and your anus has a hissy, diarrhea. When you ate some chocolate mousse and you're squirting like a goose, diarrhea. When the doo-doo on your coat is enough to float a boat, diarrhea. When you hear a nasty squirt and it spurts up in your shirt, diarrhea. When your butt begins to croon and it sings a liquid tune, diarrhea. When you're crawling in the attic and your butt goes automatic, diarrhea. When your vision gets real blurry and you squirt out chicken curry, diarrhea. When the salsa was real spicy and your butt needs something icy, diarrhea. When you scratch an itchy rash and your undies fill with hash, diarrhea. When your butt twists like a snake and it makes a chocolate shake, diarrhea. When your buddies start to grin 'cause it's stinky, brown and thin, diarrhea. When your stomach's feeling ill and you make a great big spill, diarrhea. When your colon starts to lunge and your rear drips like a sponge, diarrhea. When your girl gives you a hug and your BM fills a jug, diarrhea. When you eat prunes to kill time, then your butt commits a crime, diarrhea. When you're taking off your thong and the smell of it's all wrong, diarrhea. When you wake up to the sound of your skivvies getting brown, diarrhea. When you get kicked by a mule and your stool looks like it's drool, diarrhea. When you eat at your friend Sydney's and you shard out both your kidneys, diarrhea. When you stain your tidy whities, then it soaks through to your nighties, diarrhea. When you know you've got the trots 'cause your shorts are filled with spots, diarrhea. When you feel something smear and it's coming from your rear, diarrhea. When your belly starts to sag and your anus starts to gag, diarrhea. When your undies feel all wet and you know it's not brown sweat, diarrhea. When you're acting all romantic and your rectum goes all frantic, diarrhea. When you ate lunch at the mess hall and you squirt a mushy meatball, diarrhea. When you're straining for an hour and you feel a rectal shower, diarrhea. When your chute becomes a freeway 'cause you eat at hometown buffet, diarrhea. When you're feeling kind of queasy and what comes out slick and greasy, diarrhea. When you wait to hear it drop, but instead it plops like slop, diarrhea. When you're looking at your watch and there's flooding in your crotch, diarrhea. When hot peppers you do scarf, then your butt begins to barf, diarrhea. When you're drinking from a goblet and your anus makes an omelet, diarrhea. When it's runny and it's brown and it's on your wedding gown, diarrhea. When you're feeling really trashy and it shoots out wet and splashy, diarrhea. When you eat with your friend Alan and you crap a half a gallon, diarrhea. When you rip a nasty foamer and it drowns an old beachcomber, diarrhea. When your rectum snaps and twitches and it dumps poo in your britches, diarrhea. When you think it's just a dud but it takes off like a scud, diarrhea. When your temperature climbs higher and you shoot out liquid fire, diarrhea. When your stomach starts flip-flopping and the floor needs a good mopping, diarrhea. When your toilet starts to clog 'cause you dropped a sloppy log, diarrhea. When you eat some spoiled meat and excrete upon your sheet, diarrhea. When your rectum goes varoom and your pant legs start to bloom, diarrhea. When you feel it slip and sliding from your hiney start to glide, diarrhea. When your blast sounds like a rasp and your butt lets out a gasp, diarrhea. When you're looking at some art and you accidentally shart, diarrhea. When you think that you're just gassy but it comes out wet and glassy, diarrhea. When you're playing with your grandson and your rear sounds like a burp gun, diarrhea. When the cops catch a wrongdoer and he smells just like a sewer, diarrhea. When you're taking off your suit and your chute begins to toot, diarrhea. When something greasy hits your toe like a slimy sloppy Joe, diarrhea. When you fish 12 hours straight and you leak what smells like bait, diarrhea. When your friends are all called nerds 'cause they can't control their turds, diarrhea. When you're in the water closet and you make a soft deposit, diarrhea. When you think it's just a ripper but it turns out it's a dripper, diarrhea. When you have to miss your classes 'cause it's running like molasses, diarrhea. When you can't get out of bed and your third eye's turning red, diarrhea. When your clock strikes 1 or 2 and your pants fill with brown goo, diarrhea. When you poop in your sombrero 'cause the loo door is too narrow, diarrhea. When you're hurling like a comet and your anus starts to vomit, diarrhea. When you have to flush it twice and it looks like Spanish rice, diarrhea. When you eat your lunch at school and it tastes a lot like stool, diarrhea. When you're taking a vacation and your butt feels condensation, diarrhea. When the onions are real tasty but your poo-poo gets all pasty, diarrhea. When your tummy's feeling hollow and your shorts smell like a wallow, diarrhea. When you're driving down the road and you drop a nasty load, diarrhea. When you know that something's wrong 'cause it's dripping from your thong, diarrhea. When you change your underwear 'cause you're leaking everywhere, diarrhea. When your teacher says goodbye and your shorts are far from dry, diarrhea. When you're swimming in a stream and your butt begins to scream, diarrhea. When you feel that nature's calling, something sliding down the wall, diarrhea. When your undies start to flood and it looks like runny mud, diarrhea. When your smile turns to a frown 'cause your shorts are wet and brown, diarrhea. When you're lying on the beach and your cheeks begin to breach, diarrhea. When your wedding's all rehearsed and you get an anal burst, diarrhea. When your mom gives you a slap and it knocks out all your crap, diarrhea. When you go out for a sail and your butt blows up a gale, diarrhea. When you feel like you're an oaf 'cause you pitched a gummy loaf, diarrhea. When you're walking out the door and it sounds like something tore, diarrhea. When you're sitting side by side and you crap upon your bride, diarrhea. When your anus starts to pout and something smells like sauerkraut, diarrhea. When you try to wipe your bum and find brown gooey on your thumb, diarrhea. When you try to drop a deuce and it comes out like prune juice, diarrhea. When you're chillin' at the dance and there's pudding in your pants, diarrhea. When you're giving mom a hug and it stains her brand new rug, diarrhea. When your nachos have no cheese but there's some in your BVDs, diarrhea. When your poop gets on your brother and some more shoots on your mother, diarrhea. When your best friend starts to cry 'cause your wet poop hit his eye, diarrhea. When you try to sing a song but the smell of it's all wrong, diarrhea. When you get stung by a bee and your butt flows like the sea, diarrhea. When you're sitting in a chair and you feel something tear, diarrhea. When you think it's just a fart but it comes out like a dart, diarrhea. When you're counting all your loot and your sphincter muscles shoot, diarrhea. When you're riding in a sleigh and your hiney starts to bray, diarrhea. When your butt begins to squirt what you just had for dessert, diarrhea. When you're brushing out your hair and your buns begin to flare, diarrhea. When you start to cough and hack and your anus starts to smack, diarrhea. When you're climbing up a mountain and your butt becomes a fountain, diarrhea. When it's hanging like a chad and your butt hurts really bad, diarrhea. When you think it's chicken soup but it's really liquid poop, diarrhea. When you start to beg and pray and your butt begins to spray, diarrhea. When you try to fake a smile but it's pouring down the aisle, diarrhea. When you smell something foul and there's movement in your bowel, diarrhea. When you get sick on a cruise and you think you feel an ooze, diarrhea. When your stomach feels all gushy and you just ate Costco sushi, diarrhea. When your tire hits a rut and your lunch flies out your butt, diarrhea. When you eat a bowl of rice and what comes out isn't nice, diarrhea. When you have Thanksgiving turkey and your poop is like a Slurpee, diarrhea. When your stomach is in pain and you're making chocolate rain, diarrhea. When you think your friends are joking but your pants are really soaking, diarrhea. When you're playing with your pet and you're feeling something wet, diarrhea. When your treatment is holistic and your keister goes ballistic, diarrhea. When you're on the pot for hours and it doesn't smell like flowers, diarrhea. When you're filling up your pants in a bow-leg cowboy stance, diarrhea. When you really want to shout and it keeps on gushing out, diarrhea. When you're gnawing on a fruit bar and your BM fills a tank car, diarrhea. When you're lifting with a hoist and your shorts get tan and moist, diarrhea. When your anus makes a squeak and you find you have a leak, diarrhea. When you start to feel the pain and you just ate stale chow mein, diarrhea. When prune's your favorite juice and it squirts out your caboose, diarrhea. When you wake up in the night and you've made a wet brown sight, diarrhea. When you get a rabbit punched and your pants fill with your lunch, diarrhea. When the feeling's not that nice and you have to flush it twice, diarrhea. When you just can't run the race 'cause poop is spraying in your face, diarrhea. When you're down upon your luck and your butt quacks like a duck, diarrhea. When you think you pinched a dud, yet you're dripping with butt mud, diarrhea. When you're feeling really scatty and you poop a salmon patty, diarrhea. When you just drift off to dreamland and your rear plays like a jug band, diarrhea. When you don't feel like a winner and your butt blows out your dinner, diarrhea. When you hear your stomach growl and you smell something foul, diarrhea. When your forehead's drenched with sweat and your leggings are all wet, diarrhea. When you're lying in your bed and find liquid by your head, diarrhea. When you're weak from all the strain and something evil clogs the drain, diarrhea. When at first you think it's glue, then you find it's sticky poo, diarrhea. When you're driving down the road and your butt tries to explode, diarrhea. When you're feeling really sick and your poop comes fast and slick, diarrhea. When you try to sneak a fart but out comes a soggy tart, diarrhea. When you shift it into gear and you feel something smear, diarrhea. When you try to eat a crumpet and your chute blares like a trumpet, diarrhea. When you're twirling your baton and poop splatters on the lawn, diarrhea. When you're playing with your dog and your anus slips a cog, diarrhea. When you're climbing up a tree and it trickles to your knee, diarrhea. When you feel like you could puke and your butt blows like a nuke, diarrhea. When you feel that certain chill and your undies start to fill, diarrhea. When you try to drop your dung and it's pulling on your lung, diarrhea. When it runs down in the gutter and it looks like peanut butter, diarrhea. When you start to sing off pitch and your colon starts to twitch, diarrhea. When you fall and bump your femur and out pops a slimy steamer, diarrhea. When something's flying through the air and it makes a brown wet glare, diarrhea. When you're waiting for a train and it's sticky on your aim, diarrhea. When your friends begin to swear and poop's flying through the air, diarrhea. When you laugh at something funny and your pants get hot and runny, diarrhea. When you just can't get to sleep and your anus starts to weep, diarrhea. When you're running down the hall and something's nasty on the wall, diarrhea. When you can't believe your ears 'cause you hear your butt cry tears, diarrhea. When you push so hard you strain and it's running down the lane, diarrhea. When you just ate roasted corn and your butt honks like a horn, diarrhea. When you have to take a sick day 'cause you crapped a cheese souffle, diarrhea. When you're sitting on the pot and what pours out's brown and hot, diarrhea. When you're shopping at the store and it's dripping on the floor, diarrhea. When you wake up in a sweat and your poop shoots like a jet, diarrhea. When you act like you are cool and your pants fill up with stool, diarrhea. When you're feeling kinda funky and your butt smells super skunky, diarrhea. When you're chillin' with your daughter and you feel the poo-poo water, diarrhea. When you're eating at the fair and there's gravy in your chair, diarrhea. When your stomach starts to hurt and your anus starts to squirt, diarrhea. When you ski the Alps of France and there's cocoa in your pants, diarrhea. When you're working at a sawmill and your shorts smell like a landfill, diarrhea. When you're at the water park and the pool starts turning dark, diarrhea. When you're lying on the beach and your butt begins to screech, diarrhea. When you're eating at the grill and your colon starts to spill, diarrhea. When you know that certain smell and you ate at Taco Bell, diarrhea. When you're mowing the front lawn and your pants fill up with flan, diarrhea. When you try to catch a train and your shorts begin to stain, diarrhea. When you have to wash your seat 'cause your shorts don't smell so sweet, diarrhea. When you try to make romance and something fecal soils your pants, diarrhea. When you're lying in your bed and feel poo-poo start to spread, diarrhea. When you're out late with your date and your feces blows its gate, diarrhea. When you're swimming in a pool and your butt begins to drool, diarrhea. When your bowels are paranoid and you just popped out a roid, diarrhea. When you're running down the road and you can't control your load, diarrhea. When you do a little dance and it's runny in your pants, diarrhea. When you can't control your bum and it pulses like a drum, diarrhea. When you're walking down the street and you smell like rancid meat, diarrhea. When you're playing with your cat and you squirt some slippery scat, diarrhea. When you're shopping at the mall and your anus drops the ball, diarrhea. When it all shoots out your bum like a bullet from a gun, diarrhea. When you stop to tie your shoe and it's filled with liquid poo, diarrhea. When you eat your favorite dish and you feel something go squish, diarrhea. When you're feeling dehydrated 'cause your butt is corrugated, diarrhea. When like hot and stinky mud from your butt comes a brown flood, diarrhea. When you smell like fishing bait and your pants aren't hanging straight, diarrhea. When you really start to panic 'cause your colon's going manic, diarrhea. When you wake up from a nap and your bed is filled with crap, diarrhea. When your keister goes kaboom and effluent floods the room, diarrhea. When you can't go rock and rollin' 'cause you just blew out your colon, diarrhea. When your stomach starts to churn and your chute begins to burn, diarrhea. When you're cooking on the grill and your butt emits a trill, diarrhea. When you're laughing at a joke and your sphincter starts to choke, diarrhea. When your pants begin to cling and your anus starts to sing, diarrhea. When your tongue begins to stutter and your butt smells like a gutter, diarrhea. When you're feeling kind of low and your poop begins to flow, diarrhea. When you're hanging with the boys and you hear that telltale noise, diarrhea. When your heart is quickly pumping and your colon starts a thumping, diarrhea. When you get that certain feeling and your poo-poo hits the ceiling, diarrhea. When you hear the doorbell chime and your undies fill with slime, diarrhea. When you miss the bathroom door and brown liquid hits the floor, diarrhea. When you're not feeling very well and you can't deny the smell, diarrhea. When you can't believe your eyes 'cause your butt's attracting flies, diarrhea. When there's pounding in your head and it smells like something's dead, diarrhea. When you're on your way to church and you feel your sphincter lurch, diarrhea. When you're talking to the teacher and you poop a double feature, diarrhea. When you're watering your plants and a torrent fills your pants, diarrhea. When your dinner seems real tasty but it comes out thin and pasty, diarrhea. When you feel like you'll explode and you release a brown load, diarrhea. When your guts begin to aching and your colon starts a quaking, diarrhea. When you're acting like a kook and your anus starts to puke, diarrhea. When you take a trip to Europe and your undies fill with syrup, diarrhea. When you run home in a rush and your bum begins to gush, diarrhea. When you're walking through the store and leave a trail upon the floor, diarrhea. When you're talking to your birds and your panties filled with turds, diarrhea. When the feeling gets real urgent and brown fluid is emergent, diarrhea. When you're happy as a lark and your butt begins to bark, diarrhea. When you're walking into town and you slip on something brown, diarrhea. When your legs begin to quiver and your butt's a raging river, diarrhea. When your pants are filled with cocoa and you ate at Pollo Loco, diarrhea. When you feel you have the urge and your rectum starts to surge, diarrhea. When your eyelids start to droop and your undies fill with poop, diarrhea. When you're sucking on a plum and your poop chute starts to hum, diarrhea. When you can't keep your butt harnessed and it yields a wet brown harvest, diarrhea. When to the restroom you do race and find more than just a trace, diarrhea. When you try to get some leisure and your colon has a seizure, diarrhea. When your farts are getting louder and your anus makes corn chowder, diarrhea. When you can't get it to flush 'cause there's simply too much mush, diarrhea. When you eat some Reese's Pieces and your rectal flow increases, diarrhea. When you go to meet St. Peter and eject an entire liter, diarrhea. When your girl calls you a hunk, then you float a slippery chunk, diarrhea. When your anus is all bruised and the toilet looks abused, diarrhea. When it starts to come out thick, then it turns runny and slick, diarrhea. When your mouth is tasting sour and your panties get a shower, diarrhea. When your anus starts to bloom and liquid shoots across the room, diarrhea. When your butt begins to shiver and you poop out your whole liver, diarrhea. When you're watching your TV and that smell is not pee-pee, diarrhea. When you have to end your tour 'cause your butt made soup du jour, diarrhea. When you're fishing with a bobber and your hiney starts to slobber, diarrhea. When your pants are not quite down and the floor turns wet and brown, diarrhea. When you think that you are cool, then your rear end starts to drool, diarrhea. When you lift a heavy load and your new knickers explode, diarrhea. When you're feeling really sick and your poop is not real thick, diarrhea. When you're trying hard to think but you can't ignore the stink, diarrhea. When your colon's in a knot and your anus belches snot, diarrhea. When your lips begin to pout and a geyser starts to spout, diarrhea. When your back door snorts and talks 'cause you ate at Jack in the Box, diarrhea. When your car just won't quite start and you feel a deep wet fart, diarrhea. When you're climbing to the loft and feel something smooth and soft, diarrhea. When you try to make some mud but it's just a liquid dud, diarrhea. When you're counting all your money and smell something that's not honey, diarrhea. When you're trying to drop a log and it's slimy like a bog, diarrhea. When you wake up from your sleep and your poo has gotten deep, diarrhea. When you just ate something new and your butt makes a fondue, diarrhea. When you feel like you could die and poo's running down your thigh, diarrhea. When you can't stand on your feet and something smells like potted meat, diarrhea. When you can't control the urge and your colon starts to purge, diarrhea. When you try to take a crap and it comes out thin brown sap, diarrhea. When you're looking for some fun and your bum begins to run, diarrhea. When you're cheering for your team and it shoots out in a stream, diarrhea. When you think you have a plan and your butt sprays like a fan, diarrhea. When you get cramps once or twice and the outcome isn't nice, diarrhea. When the conversation's boring and your butt begins outpouring, diarrhea. When a torrent you release and it runs out of your crease, diarrhea. When you're reaching way up high and you make a chocolate pie, diarrhea. When you think you need to go and your shorts fill with slick dough, diarrhea. When you're ready to cut loose but what comes out's only juice, diarrhea. When you hide behind the curtain 'cause your butt just won't quit squirting, diarrhea. When you simply can't deduce why your poop is so chartreuse, diarrhea. When you ate at a buffet and your anus starts to fray, diarrhea. When you wake up from a dream and your poop's a running stream, diarrhea. When your baby starts to cry and hot mocha hits your eye, diarrhea. When your anus isn't taut and your squirting breaks the pot, diarrhea. When your sphincter may explode with a stinky fluid load, diarrhea. When you think your BM's through, then you feel the flowing poo, diarrhea. When you eat some bad coleslaw and you crap like a macaw, diarrhea. When you stop to take a break and your butt creates a lake, diarrhea. When you try to grow a tail but brown liquid fills the pail, diarrhea. When you know it's not good taste, that you can't control your waist, diarrhea. When it ruins your whole day 'cause your butt makes a frappe, diarrhea. When your breakfast you are making and your shorts smell like bad bacon, diarrhea. When you think it's just a fart but you crap out your whole heart, diarrhea. When you ate a spicy brunch and you hear a fecal crunch, diarrhea. When you check it with your hand and it comes back wet and tanned, diarrhea. When you checked it with your fingers and the chocolate stain still lingers, diarrhea. When you're working on your theses and your pants get soaked with feces, diarrhea. When the brown stain starts to show and you just can't stop the flow, diarrhea. When you're getting your first kiss and your chute begins to hiss, diarrhea. When you're trying on a dress and you feel a pending mess, diarrhea. When your panties start to gather and you excrete hot brown lather, diarrhea. When it isn't even noon and your butt blows a typhoon, diarrhea. When you wake up all alert and you do a mammoth squirt, diarrhea. When your vision gets all blurred and you birth a squishy turd, diarrhea. When your toilet seat is tipping and you can't control your dripping, diarrhea. When your cramps just won't cease and your skivvies fill with grease, diarrhea. When you stuff your butt with cotton 'cause it's starting to smell rotten, diarrhea. When you're working with some Play-Doh and release a brown tornado, diarrhea. When you think you're living large, then you feel a brown discharge, diarrhea. When you lose your train of thought and your butt makes a bank shot, diarrhea. When your third eye is a blinkin' and your undies are a stinkin', diarrhea. When you just ate half raw chicken and your anus starts to sicken, diarrhea. When there's poo-poo on the floor and there's more upon the door, diarrhea. When you interrupt your plans 'cause your shorts are like wetlands, diarrhea. When you pull your panties down and you find they're dank and brown, diarrhea. When you try to drop a deuce and what comes out just like juice, diarrhea. When you go to get your mail and you're leaving a brown trail, diarrhea. When wet doo-doo starts to come and you stop it with your thumb, diarrhea. When for dinner you are grateful, then your colon dumps a plateful diarrhea. When you try to sneak some dry ones and you find out it's the wet runs diarrhea. When you try to wash your jeans and see what looks like refried beans diarrhea. When her beauty makes you swoon and your butt squirts out a prune diarrhea. When the color leaves your cheeks and your brand new Speedo leaks diarrhea. When you're going to the show and your skivvies overflow diarrhea. When you grunt and push and strain and something sounds like falling rain diarrhea. When you gulp down a whole quart and your rear end starts to snort diarrhea. When you're sitting on the can and it turns a nasty tan diarrhea. When you try to play the lottery and your butt feels hot and watery diarrhea. When your belly starts to blow up and your anus starts to throw up diarrhea. When you think that you are through, then you feel more runny poo diarrhea. When your eyeballs start to dart and you rip a nasty shart diarrhea. When you're standing on a scale and you drop a soft brown tail diarrhea. When your pants feel really mushy and they're filled with something slushy diarrhea. When your butt is raw and sore from the leaks in your trapdoor diarrhea. When your colon starts to torque and you can't stop it with a cork diarrhea. When you're lying in the sack and it's creeping up your back diarrhea. When your colon starts to cringe and your butt goes on a binge diarrhea. When you try to hold it in but you find it's way too thin diarrhea. When there's itching in your crotch and you see a big brown splotch diarrhea. When you can't hold back your tears cause it's coming out your ears diarrhea. When you bend to touch your toes and something acrid hits your nose diarrhea. When you're looking for the salt and your hiney makes a malt diarrhea. When you try to act real cool and your shorts fill up with stool diarrhea. When that smell is in the air and skid marks are everywhere diarrhea. When your stomach hurts like flurry and your butt squirts out a slurry diarrhea. When you're drinking a rum swizzle and your anus starts to drizzle diarrhea. When you're walking down the aisle and you dribble something vile diarrhea. When you just lost all control and you fill the toilet bowl diarrhea. When you try to stand up tall and something splatters on the wall diarrhea. When you're dancing to the polka and you make a chocolate mocha diarrhea. When you try to hold it in but it's runny and too thin diarrhea. When you quickly try to flush cause you can't control the gush diarrhea. When you think that you can wait but you find out it's too late diarrhea. When you try to fake a smile but it's flowing like the Nile diarrhea. When your head begins to pound and your shorts have been well browned diarrhea. When you can't eat your dessert cause your anus just went squirt diarrhea. When you're sleeping in the loft and something leaks out that's real soft diarrhea. When your face goes pale and deadpan cause you just filled up the bedpan diarrhea. When a strong smell hits your nose and you know it's not a rose diarrhea. When you think you're having twins and it's brown around your shins diarrhea. When you bend to pet your dog and hear a croak that's not a frog diarrhea. When someone kicks you in the tush and you feel something go smush diarrhea. When you poop on your blind date cause your colon just can't wait diarrhea. When the gas pains get extreme and then brown's the color scheme diarrhea. When you try to act real hip then your butt begins to drip diarrhea. When your squirts have slowed you're thankful then your butt unloads a tank full diarrhea. When you're trying hard to mop it and your finger just won't stop it, diarrhea. When there's ringing in your ears and your anus cries brown tears, diarrhea. When you're feeling kind of sad and your shorts are smelling bad, diarrhea. When you try to take a whiz and your butt begins to fizz, diarrhea. When you're eating apricots and you get the leaky trots, diarrhea. When there's aching in your piles and a brown stream runs for miles, diarrhea. When your mouth begins to sour 'cause you've been pooping for an hour, diarrhea. When brown's running down your leg like a pureed soft-boiled egg, diarrhea. When you're walking down the hall and you feel something fall, diarrhea. When you're putting on a dress and you smell a stinky mess, diarrhea. When your voice gets shrill and creaky and your butt is sore and leaky, diarrhea. When your bowels are feeling loose and your shorts fill up with juice, diarrhea. When you're taking a siesta and your rear has a fiesta, diarrhea. When you're talking to your girl and your butt begins to hurl, diarrhea. When the cramps just will not cease and you feel the molten grease, diarrhea. When you're going to the bank and your skivvies smell real rank, diarrhea. When you think you're feeling better but your pants keep getting wetter, diarrhea. When you're singing in the choir and your pants are a quagmire, diarrhea. When you feel it start to spew and it's dripping on your shoe, diarrhea. When you just can't help but burp and your butt begins to chirp, diarrhea. When your butt honks like a horn 'cause you just ate bad creamed corn, diarrhea. When you're listening to singing and your butt begins mudslinging, diarrhea. When you just can't stop the gush and you can't get it to flush, diarrhea. When you feel something inside and your ribs echo worldwide, diarrhea. When there's yucky on your clothes and your butt squirts like a hose, diarrhea. When your stomach starts to churn and your third eye starts to burn, diarrhea. When you get a high colonic and out comes a stinky tonic, diarrhea. When you eat a tasty feast and turds shoot out like they're grease, diarrhea. When your ribs are getting looser and your butt acts like a juicer, diarrhea. When you're playing in the snow and you feel your gasket blow, diarrhea. When you play a game of squash and your undies need a wash, diarrhea. When you're talking with your sisters and your roids pop like they're blisters, diarrhea. When you're taking a sea cruise and you've drunk way too much booze, diarrhea. When you simply can't keep standing 'cause your colon keeps expanding, diarrhea. When the teardrop in your eye makes your anus start to cry, diarrhea. When you see your dinner twice and the last time isn't nice, diarrhea. When you lose your sense of humor 'cause your butt becomes a boomer, diarrhea. When you thought you couldn't go but there's poop from head to toe, diarrhea. When you're lying on the floor and it leaks from your back door, diarrhea. When your belly starts to swell and the Pepto just won't quell, diarrhea. When you're posing for a picture and release a runny mixture, diarrhea. When you get some rare disease and your bum starts leaking cheese, diarrhea. When you're walking home from work and your rectum starts to jerk, diarrhea. When your blue eyes both turn brown and a rogue turd starts to crown, diarrhea. When your anus snorts and howls and you can't control your bowels, diarrhea. When there's something you emit that's like cocoa mixed with grit, diarrhea. When you think you'll need a cork 'cause you ate some rancid pork, diarrhea. When you know you're in a jam 'cause your butt's a bursting dam, diarrhea. When the poo shoots in the air and it comes down in your hair, diarrhea. When you think your butt just twinged and your anus comes unhinged, diarrhea. When you feel a leaky mess and it soaks into your dress, diarrhea. When you've eaten the last crab cake and your rectum starts an earthquake, diarrhea. When your friends don't think it's cool that you can't control your stool, diarrhea. When you eat a tainted shrimp and your gas fills up a blimp, diarrhea. When your ain begins to fizzle and you sense a pending drizzle, diarrhea. When you burp and then fart twice and your undies pay the price, diarrhea. When you eat an unripe pear and your butt soils mom's new chair, diarrhea. When your butt begins to bellow and your shorts turn brownish yellow, diarrhea. When your stomach won't stop rocking and your anus won't stop talking, diarrhea. When you feel your undies crawling and the brown stuff keeps on falling, diarrhea. When you drink some dark stout ale and your sphincter starts to fail, diarrhea. When there's soreness in your throat and your pants become a moat, diarrhea. When you eat a tainted weenie and your shorts get wet and steamy, diarrhea. When your stomach really hurts and you know that it's the squirts, diarrhea. When you're walking by the ocean and your bowels make a commotion, diarrhea. When you must stay home all week cause your chute runs like a creek, diarrhea. When you're in a real big rush and you squeeze out runny mush, diarrhea. When you eat some tainted lamb stew and your anus says no thank you, diarrhea. When you're going to the fair and crapping everything you wear, diarrhea. When your stomach's like a whirlpool and your shorts are like a cesspool, diarrhea. When your poo-poo starts to fly like a jet up in the sky, diarrhea. When you get a severe cramp and your undies get real damp, diarrhea. When you're walking in the mall and you feel something fall, diarrhea. When you go out on a date and you crap out half your weight, diarrhea. When it's coming out a lot and it looks like it's black rot, diarrhea. When your face gets gray and pallid and you coat the tuna salad, diarrhea. When you plug it with a bung and you crap out your whole lung, diarrhea. When you're driving your jalopy and your rectum gets all sloppy, diarrhea. When you're climbing up a ladder and you feel something splatter, diarrhea. When you're riding in your Chevy and you feel something heavy, diarrhea. When you're sliding into first and you feel something burst, diarrhea. When you're sliding into second and you feel something beckon, diarrhea. When you're sliding into third and you shoot a liquid turd, diarrhea. When you're sliding into home and you feel something foam, diarrhea. When you just hit a home run and your butt shoots like a gun, diarrhea. When you're playing as the shortstop and your rectum's leaking nonstop, diarrhea. When you're catching a fly ball and you can't stop nature's call, diarrhea. When you're standing at first base and poo-poo sprays up in your face, diarrhea.